people drink when they're happy, but they drink even more when the times are rough.
Hello and welcome to the Power Players. I am your host, Harun Bukhari, and my guest today is Andrew Bushby, founder of Tequila company called Buena Fe. Andrew had a long career in finance, and in COVID, his life changed. Well, in a positive way. Andrew and his fiancée started mixing drinks, which turned into Buena Fe and is now his full-time job. In our conversation, we talk about how exactly you start a tequila company and a sort of a crash course on the liquor industry in the US. Andrew is also raising capital for his company, so if you like what you hear, you can invest in Buena Fe by going to the Start Engine link in the show notes. So with that, let's get right into it with Andrew Bushby. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you. I want to talk all about your tequila company, but before we dive in, I want to talk about, so the average person in the US spends $875 on alcohol per year. That's about $72 a month. What exactly are these people buying?
First of all, thanks very much for having me, and very excited to be here. It's a good question. I mean, the alcohol market itself is about approximately $283 billion in the US. Now, if you put that in terms of, like other comparable, I would say other comparable size markets, it's about 1/3 the size of the trucking industry, right? So it's a big number. And so, yeah, a lot of people are drinking, and I would say it's not necessarily what we would think. The split is more beer. I think beer is kind of the market leader in the US. That's close to 46% of consumption is beer. And then you have spirits, which would incorporate, the types of spirit RTDs that we'll talk a little bit about today. That number's about 37%. And then wine actually is at the tail end of that at around 17%. And obviously it depends, right? Like it depends on the demographic. It depends on, the location of this individual, what they're going to be into. You're thinking more cosmopolitan type cities, you're going to see a higher spirit spend there than you might do, say, down in the Rust Belt or somewhere like that, where you're going to see a higher beer consumption number.
So 40% of the liquor consumed in the US is approximately people drinking beer.
46% of the alcohol consumption in the US.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a very popular segment. And a lot of that is down to convenience as well. Predominantly across the US, you have separate rules for beer and wine and liquor. There's only a handful, there's about 13 states where you can go and buy liquor in grocery or alongside beer, etc. The majority of the states, in the US, they will have separate liquor stores, and then they'll have beer and wine, which you can buy, at grocery or deli, that type of thing.
And why is that the case in the US? Because it seems like in Europe, pretty much every store sells alcohol. Why is the US like this?
The US, the rules are sort of semi-complicated. They were introduced kind of at the end of Prohibition. And the whole idea was they wanted to compartmentalize each aspect of the alcohol industry, so you wouldn't end up with one player who has too big a share. And so that ultimately created what we have today, which is the 3-tier system. And so the 3-tier system means that I, as a manufacturer, I can't actually sell you any alcohol at all. I'm not licensed to do it. I can only sell my alcohol to a distributor who carries a distributorship license. And then that distributor, he can only sell his alcohol to the retailer, and the retailer can sell the alcohol to the final consumer. So that's sort of the 3-tier system. And then in order to kind of break it up a little bit further, you had the sort of the separate licensing options, which, can be anything from whether it's alcohol that's intended for medicinal purposes, but really what we're talking about in consumption is going to be on-premise licensing and off-premise licensing. So on-premise licensing being, your bars and restaurants, etc., and then off-premise licensing being grocery and then liquor stores. So it's just breaking it up even further to kind of spread the love around, but also in terms of spirits, people were very nervous about the higher proof alcohol. So they're like, we need to control this substance as well.
I want to go back to you. So tell our listeners where you grew up and what exactly did you want to do as a child?
So I was born just outside London, and then I was raised in Scotland. And so a long way from the agave fields of Jalisco. And when I was young, I mean, I wanted to be an entrepreneur, I think. And like loosely knowing what that was as I grew up was because my grandfather was a successful entrepreneur. He founded a company called Unibond in the UK, which is effectively like a builders products company. And it grew, back in the 80s, back in the sort of 70s and 80s, while the DIY boom was prevalent in both the US and the UK. People were buying their houses. They wanted to do lots to them. He was providing products to, whether it's paint or trying to think like ceiling covering, all sorts of various products. The brand sort of grew exponentially during that boom period. And then they were bought out by SmithKline and Beecham back in the day. And so I sort of saw this success in somebody who was creative and hardworking. And I thought, well, that's kind of what I want to do. So here we are eventually.
So you had a long, illustrious career in finance. Tell me what you did after college, and then how did you end up starting your own tequila brand?
Yeah. So I went to university in Scotland after boarding school, and then, graduated with a degree in economics and moved to London and started working at Blackstone, which was a great opportunity right out of university. And so I was with them for about 8 years in the real estate team. And my role was we were part of the asset management team, and we were heavily involved in any project that had development aspects related to it, which is great fun because you're obviously, you're building the big buildings. And Blackstone always had a mantra, and still does generally, is sort of no JVs and no construction. But occasionally, some of the projects or the acquisitions, they would require construction and development. And so that sort of saw me building everything from student accommodation in London, and all the way through to kind of mixed use schemes in Dalian in the northeastern provinces of China. So got to do a bit of traveling with that, and really enjoyed it. But after about 8 years, fancied a change and spent a bit of time, visiting New York, and I'd always wanted to live here. So I left Blackstone. So after taking a bit of time off and doing a bit of traveling, decided that, New York was the place for me. And so came over here and fancied doing something with a little bit more autonomy. And so went into the real estate capital markets, working for a UK real estate services company called Savills. Because as a UK citizen, getting a visa to work for a UK firm based in the US is a lot easier than, potentially having to go and apply for a US-based firm. So then spent sort of the last 5 years working in the US capital markets, which was obviously a very interesting time to be doing it because you're coming off the peak and then straight into COVID and things got very interesting.
And how would you compare working in London to New York?
I would say it's definitely different from a cultural standpoint. I would say the US is very much, straight down to business. The UK, I think they certainly enjoy longer lunches with more wine in the UK. And,
so is it true that in New York you work an average of 4 to 5 more hours than when you're in Europe?
I would say so. I mean, I spent more time at the desk in the US than I did in the UK, surprisingly. But again, that was sort of, I guess, a lot of the nature of the work in the UK, well, in UK, Europe, when I was doing that sort of more development focused role of Blackstone, is you're out and about and you're meeting a lot of people as well. But yeah, certainly I think when it comes down to sort of day in, day out, you're definitely spending a little bit more time on the tools here in New York.
So you came to New York to do a finance capital markets job, and fast forward 5-6 years, you have a tequila brand now. So tell me the story of, how did the idea come to you?
So I'm a co-founder of the brand with my fiance, and we say that Buona Fe is kind of our COVID baby. So we would, I don't know if you recall, the whole city shut down and there were very few places to go and very few things open this summer of 2020. But liquor stores were open and the parks were open. So we used to make our own cocktails, we'd mix up some tequila cocktails and we'd take them down to the West Side Highway and set up the chairs and hang out there. And then, inevitably the flask does run dry. And so you're like, well, what are we going to have next? And so we'd go along and take a look in the liquor stores, and we were looking at the options there, and they were all kind of filled with, preservatives, artificial flavors and colors and all the rest of it. And, there was nothing that was like 100% agave product as well. All of these guys are out there using the tequila products that were there, which were very few. I think Cutwater was the only one in existence at that point. We're using Mixto. And so we're like, we could definitely do something better. And that was sort of the birth place for that idea. But it was a genesis of also seeing the trends. And when it comes to investing, I think that's always, there are, two ways, like try and spot the trends. But the other thing is if you see or use a service and you really like it as well, something like that, then that's the other thing to hop onto. But this particular trend that we, seeing more and more people were drinking, hard seltzers, canned drinks, alternatives to beer. When we would go off and, drink at friends' houses or, barbecues, that kind of stuff, you're taking beers. And that was less the case now. You were seeing more people with these kind of ready-to-drink products. We were a massive boom in 2020. And so I thought maybe we could do something here with tequila, and maybe if we did it with real attention to detail, we focused on the quality of the ingredients, there would be a market for that, and we could get a premium for that increased quality. And so that sort of brings us to where we are, but I can sort of go into a little bit more, tell you a bit more.
Yeah, a lot of people have amazing ideas, but it's really hard to go from idea to execution. What exactly did you do from that thought to launching a drink?
Sure. And here's where I'll kind of jump in and say, again, one of the reasons why we did it, and I heard this like great quote the other day, which is we do these things not because they're easy, but because we thought they would be easy. And so
it wasn't as easy as you thought it was.
It wasn't as easy. Yeah, in my head, when we sat down on the West Side Highway and we thought about doing this, we would have exited by now. But you have to, when you change industries and start looking at something else completely different from what you're used to. I mean, I was still approaching it very much like I would approach a development or the creation of a new business when I was at Blackstone. And, one of the things that I was taught there and learned is that if you don't know something about the industry which you're about to embark on, find somebody who does and bring them into your team. And so that's effectively what we did. So I picked up the phone. I just started making telephone calls, trying to speak to people, learn as much as possible about the industry and about sort of pursuing this. And I eventually found somebody who put me in touch with Jason, who was the ex-president of Mike's Hard Lemonade. And it just so happened that, he had been out and done his own brands following a fantastic career working at both Gallo and Mark Anthony brands, which is obviously Mike's Hard Lemonade and White Claw. He'd gone on to effectively work, build a number of his own brands, had some successful exits to both large alcohol companies as well as some private equity funds. And he was saying, I'm just looking to work with entrepreneurs who want to do something similar now. And so he was kind of the first guy we brought on to the team and said, right, teach me everything you know. And so that was step one. Step two was then, right, let's see if we can find a team to help us fully understand the process as well as kind of where the numbers are going to add up. And so we found a company who helps with the development of beverages, and they were able to lay out the sort of the roadblocks of everything that we needed to do, because you have to jump through so many hoops, most notably with like the TTB, who want to make sure that all of your labels are perfect and they're not misleading in any way. And we had to go backwards and forwards with ours because we were trying to create something that was different within the space. So we didn't want to call our drink a tequila soda or a tequila seltzer because we were using a bit more juice than our competitors. So you get this sort of bolder, rounder flavor. So we came up with the word quencher. So we wanted to call our drinks, an organic tequila quencher. But the lawyers at the TTB couldn't get their head around this. So we had to effectively go backwards and forwards on the labels.
And what exactly is a quencher?
A quencher is effectively a drink that satiates your thirst. And the whole idea was to sort of say, hey, look, we've got a bit more juice here. This is going to be much more refreshing. And from purely a marketing point of view, and I think this is sort of an important idea if people are thinking about doing something like this, we were looking to separate ourselves from other brands who were just doing a tequila soda or who were just doing a tequila seltzer. We wanted to be able to pick up the phone to a distributor and say, if they turned around and said, yeah, we've already got tequila soda, we're like, well, we're not, that's not what we are. We're a quencher. You don't have this yet. And so all of a sudden you get some attention.
And what does the production process look like? So you decided you wanted to create these unique tequila flavors. What exactly do you do?
Well, we decided to make it even more complicated for ourselves because we didn't want to use any preservatives in the drink. And we also wanted the thing to be 100% USDA organic. So we found effectively a food scientist, a guy who came, highly recommended, used to be one of the top guys at Cadbury Schweppes back in the day. And we set about working with him, first of all, to see, can we make this happen? Can we create this drink that's going to be shelf stable for at least a year and a half? Because that's hugely important to your distributors and your retailers, because by the time you go through the whole production process and you get to the end retailer, it can be a long period of time, and they want to know that in the meantime, that stuff is not going to go bad and it's still going to taste great. So it took us about 8 months to effectively work through the formula. We found a 100% USDA organic tequila distillery down in Jalisco, which is Galindo. So they said, yeah, they were excited to be on board for this project. So we had that ingredient, that was fine. Then the sparkling water piece is fine. And then you're now working with kind of your juices and your sort of organic natural flavors as well, because you're trying to obviously create something that is, like I said, going to be shelf stable, but when you open it up, is actually going to taste better than a lot of the other kind of cardboard tasting seltzers as well. So yeah, a lot of iterations, a lot of time in the sort of the kitchen, but we got there in the end. And while at the same time we were developing that, we were able to find a partner down in Mexico, co-packing partner, who had a facility in Arandas, which is the kind of that highland region of Jalisco, where a lot of really great tequilas come from. And he had just started doing canned drinks, had been making energy drinks there in the past, but had some downtime on his line. And so, yeah, that was kind of our go-to place, and we're still working with him at the moment.
So when the production process is going on, are you just in Jalisco, they're changing these drinks and you're drinking them live? How does that work?
Yeah, not drinking too many. I made that mistake on the first production. I got a little bit excited and a bit carried away. But yeah, we're on the floor in the factory with them. We will take, some of our professionals down there just to monitor, the weights and measures, because you want to make sure that the formula is being done to the exact level. We're then taking readings as the liquid's coming out, or as it's being mixed in the sort of the main tank. Initially, we're taking readings to make sure we're getting the right pH levels, that we've got the right amount of agave in there, so that everything is matching up to what we initially intended. Because if anybody, knows about chemistry, when you start mixing stuff together, if you up the recipe, it's not always exactly the same. And so, because some various ingredients tend to sort of react differently. So again, you're sort of fine tuning right to that last minute before you effectively, you pull down the lever and you send it through to the canning line, which is the exciting part.
So you've been very vocal about these mixto cocktails or mixto tequilas. What is the difference between 100% agave and mixto?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that, a lot of times people don't know about. Effectively, 100% agave tequila products are made, the alcohol comes from 100% of the Blue Weber agave plant. So what will happen is, once that agave is cooked and they've chopped it and squeezed out all of the agave, you use all of those agave sugars along with some water and your yeast to that, and then that ferments, and that's what kind of creates your first round, your fermented alcohol. You take that liquid and you pass that through. You distill that once, twice. Has to be distilled twice to be, tequila. But we distill 3 times for ours. But once you go through that two times distillation process, the stuff that comes out the other end is tequila. And obviously then you add water to that to bring down the alcohol level. But that's effectively the process. What happens with mixto is they will use 51% of the sugars used for the fermentation process will come from the Blue Weber agave plant. And then the other 49% will come from either cane sugar generally or high fructose corn syrup. So you end up with these sort of 2 separate sugar sources that are mixed together. Again, that will go through the distillation process. And then alternatively, sometimes you might get somebody who will take complete 100% agave product and then just mix that with a grain neutral spirit. So you're using less tequila because 100% agave is an expensive product compared to, making a grain alcohol. So effectively the mixto product that you can say, hey, this is real tequila or this is premium tequila, you can say whatever you want, and it's unregulated. And so in order to get the 100% agave labeling and have that on your product, you have to make it in Jalisco, and it is regulated by the CRT, and they make sure that all of the alcohol that's going into that can or bottle is made from 100% Blue Weber agave. So we always say, to people, if you're going to go out, you're going to buy a bottle of tequila or a canned product like ours, look at the label, because if it says premium tequila or real tequila and it doesn't say 100% agave, you've got no way of knowing what you're actually getting. It's most likely, and it's more often than not, it's mixto. And we know the majority of our competitors are using mixto, but we were adamant that we wanted a proper 100% agave product. And we also wanted that to be 100% USDA organic.
And why does it have to be from Jalisco?
It's kind of like a protection similar to how champagne comes from the Champagne region in France, or cognac comes from cognac as well. So it's rules put in place to sort of maintain or protect the tequila manufacturing industry within the area.
So tequila consumption has increased a lot over the last few years. It's actually up 10% compared to 10 years ago. Why exactly are so many people suddenly interested in drinking tequila?
It's a very good question. I think the short answer is probably largely celebrity. I think you had George Clooney brought a lot of attention to the industry once he created Casamigos. His attention on the spotlight that he shone on the industry made more people turn their heads. And there were sort of a lot of stories and people talking in the media articles about tequila perhaps being the healthier alternative. Not that you would turn around and say that alcohol's healthy, because I can't, say that it's healthy, but I can say there are better choices.
What is the healthiest alcohol?
Well, I would say it's 100% agave tequila for me, on the basis that, you've got this, all alcohol's gluten-free, but you're coming out of, you're not using any kind of wheat or corn or anything. The alcohol is coming from the agave. The agave has a slightly different sugar enzyme. So some people say that they prefer the way it makes them feel. It can give them a bit of an upper experience when they're drinking it, as opposed to being, depressant. But a combination of people understanding that, hey, tequila isn't really what we were all shooting back at college and university back in the day. That generally was the mixto type product, the stuff that, gives you a brutal hangover and leads to, the bad decisions, the text to the ex, etc. It's largely celebrity, but it's also an evolution of the industry as well.
So you currently have 2 flavors, the mango pineapple and the watermelon strawberry. How exactly did you decide on these 2 flavors?
It was, like I mentioned before, so my fiance and I, we founded it together, and I love mango and pineapple as kind of my favorite juices to mix with tequila. And she's always been a watermelon and tequila drinker. We effectively combined both of our personal favorites to create our SKUs, our versions. And so we've got a little bit of a competition going, to see who can sell the most and which is the most popular. We very much designed the first iteration of the product on taste and quality of the flavor profile and all of the ingredients. One of the things, if we went back in time now, would we still do a combined flavor? Because you do get some people who will drink mango and not pineapple, or who will drink watermelon and not strawberry. Potentially we would say, yeah, maybe we'd do an individual flavors if we went back in time, and largely that's going to, lead to a better margin as well.
I want to talk a bit about the industry. So what exactly is ready-to-drink RTD alcohol, and why are consumers shifting to drinking them?
So the RTD segment traditionally would actually include beer as well, and beer and wine, anything that you can effectively just take, open up and consume immediately. And I think more recently with the new products that have come online, that sort of RTD idea is shifted, and people are thinking about that more now as the types of products that we've been talking about, the hard seltzers, your White Claw Trulies, and then your more sort of your spirit-based High Noons and that sort of thing. But yeah, anything that is easy, convenient, and kind of ready to go and doesn't require any preparation sort of falls into that ready to drink category.
It seems like the hard seltzer market craze is kind of over and is being replaced by these spirit-based RTDs. Why exactly is this shift happening?
It's kind of a trend that we're seeing across the board in the industry, which is a move towards premiumization. People are looking for slightly more premium products. And also it's education. So if you go back to 2020 to 2021, when White Claw is really peaking, if you ask the majority of the consumers who are holding one and you say, what are you drinking right now? They would say, oh, I'm drinking a vodka soda, and not actually realize that what they're drinking it's effectively a sugar brew base. So it's they've fermented sugar and water to give you that alcohol, but haven't gone through the distillation process that comes afterwards. And so you're missing a couple of steps. And sort of people say spirits, slightly cleaner to drink, better taste. You don't necessarily end up with as bad a hangover. Again, everybody is different, but I think people understand that a spirit-based cocktail is probably higher quality and higher caliber than a malt or a fermented sugar brew based cocktail. And the market and the players in the market have noticed that the demand is dropping off, and now White Claw have just launched their own brand of vodka. So they've got their regular vodka, a couple of flavored vodkas, and they're moving now into the spirit-based RTD category as well.
I didn't know that. What is their vodka brand called?
It's just called White Claw Vodka. So it's a new move. But as soon as you start seeing them move into that space, they predominantly have always been malt. They haven't been spirits really in the past. You're like, well, we're obviously in the right place, right? If the big guys are changing, they're pivoting, then we're probably in the right area.
And what exactly is a White Claw? You said it's like a sugar-based drink, but what is it closest to? Is it like a vodka, or what exactly is it?
Technically, it's probably closest to a beer.
Oh, really?
So to get vodka or any spirit, you take that fermented mix or fermented mash, whatever you want, you call it, and that could be, you could be mixing, sugars that have come from wheat or barley, or you might, some people will mix just sugar and water and then add yeast to that. The yeast eating the sugars, the byproduct of the yeast eating the sugars is alcohol, and that alcohol will come out at around 20% normally when you've got it in that first iteration, the fermentation process. Then what you do is you heat the thing up in a still. So, and then it sort of effectively goes through, I don't know if you remember from your younger school science days, the Liebig condenser, which is the item that cools the hot gas. What that does is it then pulls the alcohol out of the gas. The alcohol is evaporated faster before most of the rest of the product. And so that alcohol comes off a much higher ABV. So normally that'll come off anywhere in like the high 80s to 90%. I guess you could probably get up to almost pure alcohol as well, depending on your setup. You then take that distillate, it's called, and you can distill that down again to get an even purer form. If you're talking about sort of tequila, officially that needs to be distilled twice. If you go and you look towards the sort of the higher end vodkas, they tend to distill about 5 times to get a cleaner taste. But therefore, you've got a much higher alcohol base that you're using, and you're mixing that spirit there with the remainder of your cocktail, or whether that's fruit juice or whatever it is. Now, if you go back to White Claw and Truly, now they effectively they'll do the exercise of having the yeast ferment the sugars, byproducts alcohol. They will just take that byproduct and they will mix that with sparkling water and natural flavors, and that's your drink.
So big brands, for example, like PepsiCo, are entering the RTD market. Do you view them as competitors, or do you think this is going to help the industry grow?
I think they're going to help the industry grow. They've also sort of launched a new distributorship off the back of it as well, called Blue Cloud. Coca-Cola just did a deal with Constellation Brands where they've added alcohol to Fresca drinks. Again, they're getting into the game. They're getting into the game as well. They do have the advantage of scale, for sure. They have some brand recognition for these products that we don't necessarily have. But I think they're catering to the demand, and the more people are going after the RTD products because of the convenience and variety. And so I think the more convenience and the more variety and the more these guys are providing that's great. If when they open up and they start competing in a 100% agave product, then we'll get nervous. I mean, High Noon, switching to tequila, I guess for us was that's a big operator with Gallo. That is somebody who's going to be able to offer a product at a far greater discount than somebody who's making something like we're making it, with the type of quality of ingredients that we're using. But our sort of a takeaway is that if they get more people drinking tequila, then that's only good for us.
And how would you compare yourself to competitors like High Noon?
I would say it comes to the quality of ingredients is probably the number one. We are made down in Jalisco. We are regulated by the CRT. We're using 100% agave tequila. It's actually organic, 100% agave tequila. If you look on the side of our can, there's nothing that you can't pronounce, right? So if you have High Noon, you've got all sorts of preservatives and bits and pieces in there. So it comes down to really quality of ingredients. And then ultimately, I think that shines through in the taste. When we go and carry out, a lot of sort of events and tastings and that sort of thing, we end up with a huge line at our table and just people coming back for more. And it's always a nice feeling that we're actually doing something right if people keep coming back to taste with us. So I think, quality of ingredients, 100% agave, not mixto, and then that comes through in the final quality of the liquid.
Tell us a bit about where you guys are at the moment. So you launched about 2 to 3 years ago. How many cans are you selling annually, and what does growth look like?
Yeah, I would say we made our first sale to a distributor in January 2022. We opened up that market. That was Kansas, of all places. Since then, we've opened up 10 new states. So across the Northeast in New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. We were in Michigan, Illinois. We've opened up San Diego County as well, and now in Georgia too. So it's, I would say it's certainly in terms of footprint, it's been a big increase. We sold completely out of our first production by the middle of last year, which was an incredible result. I guess we're sort of projecting that we're on par to do about, I think, somewhere in the region of 12 to 14,000 cases this year, which for a second year we think is pretty substantial, up from 4,000 last year.
What is the split between online sales and distribution partners?
I would say we're probably 99+% in off-premise at the moment, and very limited amount online. Just because of the way the laws work with shipping the product, is very inefficient to ship spirit-based products versus a bottle of spirits, because we get the same kind of tax, and then we have the extra weight and the carriage. So we don't do a lot. We do a handful of people who have discovered the brand and want it where it's not available yet. But largely we're focused on the off-premise space, the liquor stores. And that's kind of driven from where the demand for this product type happens as well. We see 91% of the consumption of this product is done either at somebody's own home or their friend's home. So if you look at the industry as a whole for the RTD space, That's 91% of people drinking at home and 9% perhaps on-premise, restaurants and bars. So the majority of volume is off-premise. And so that's kind of where we want to keep our focus as we sort of scale up for the time being.
And what is your marketing strategy? Are you running Facebook ads? Do you have billboards? How exactly are you reaching people?
We do some Facebook ads, sort of Facebook, Instagram, social media, that sort of thing. We had some earned press last year. We're hoping for a bit more earned press this year when we launch our crowdfunding campaign, which has got sort of a fun, interesting angle to it, which maybe I can tell you a little bit about in a minute. But what we find is the most successful way for sort of the customer acquisition process is actually liquid to lips, and that's doing tastings. And so we're carrying out regular tastings in Total Wine and More across the states that we're in. We have some market development reps in some markets who their job is to visit 10 to 15 liquor stores a day, arrange to do, 2 to 3 tastings a week. And then we'll sponsor events as well by giving product, to various events so people can try it. And we find that that's sort of the most efficient way to use your marketing dollars rather than, spending a ton of cash on Facebook and Instagram ads.
And these tastings are happening in liquor stores?
Yeah, they'll generally happen at liquor stores, or will participate in events where you'll get a selection of, whether it be brewers or other manufacturers. We'll have an opportunity to set up a stand. There's a big one that we did last year that was great fun at Mohegan Sun up in Connecticut, which is like the big casino up there. They have a big event space. It's called Sun Brew Fest. I think we had a few thousand people through the door on both days sampling. So it's tiring, but it's good fun. And, when you're sort of getting that immediate reaction from the consumer who's trying, going, oh my God, like this is so much better than X, Y, or Z. It fills you with a bit more confidence when you've maybe had like a tough week the week before and you're starting to doubt yourself and am I doing the right thing?
And do you have some sort of a calendar for these tastings? I feel like a lot of listeners would be interested.
We do post on the social media when they're about to happen and a few days out. So we'd say, monitor our social media as at Drink Buona Fe, and you'll be able to see if there's something coming up. If you think there might be real demand for a product like ours in a specific area, you can reach out to us as well, and we can see either if we're already there and we're not in a local store, how we can get there, or if we think there might be, a case for, talking to a distributor to push to get that market open as well.
So you're doing a crowd-funded capital raise. Why exactly are you looking to raise capital right now?
I guess the main driver for that would be we want to keep implementing the marketing strategies that we're using, such as the market development reps. That is capital intensive, but it is a successful way to really help push volumes. When we set up the original company to effectively carry out the development of this product, we did it as an LLC. We were a New York-based LLC. After a year, and we decided we were going to take on external financing from an angel investor round, we decided that wasn't the right form to do it, and it perhaps wasn't the right location to do it. So we ended up forming a corporation, a Nevada-based corporation. And so when you've restarted the company effectively, it means that we now are a year behind on kind of our, I guess, credit history for the company. So crowdfunding is sort of, it seems like a good be for us to be able to, not only allow people who have enjoyed Buona Fe to invest and people who necessarily have looked at tequila and said, you know what, I think alcohol is a great opportunity and tequila is on fire. I'd love to be able to put some dollars in on that. And so that there's the opportunity for them to do that. And then from our point of view, the great upside is that you've got consumers who are effectively becoming ambassadors as well, and they're going to encourage their friends to do it, to drink it. And I think that's, capital and effectively awareness are two great outcomes from crowdfunding.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but give me your 60-second pitch. Why should someone invest in Buona Fe?
I would say alcohol is a great sector to invest in if religion or other reasons don't stop you from wanting to invest in there, because it's like toothpaste. It's one of those sort of recession-proof markets because people drink when they're happy, but they drink even more when the times are rough. And that's sort of the alcohol space as a driver. But then if you think about us as a product type, you've got a huge amount of demand and interest moving into tequila. So with year over year, the amount of consumption of spirit-based RTDs is up by about 55%. We're seeing everything trend in the direction of spirit-based RTDs. From my point of view, I'm all in on it because I believe in it. And I think, whether or not you wanted to do it for a bit of fun, a bit like owning a tequila brand is a bit like, owning a restaurant can be a bit of fun, but we think that there's actually some really good risk-adjusted returns to be had in the future. So we're going to keep growing the brand. We pushed the button on the design of our new multi-pack yesterday. So we're looking forward to bringing, an 8-pack, which is what the retailer is demanding, and we're seeing as one of the most popular buys at the moment.
So 8-pack of the same flavor.
8 new flavors, 8 brand new flavors.
Oh, 8 new flavors. Can you tell us about them?
So I can't give too much away because Patty obviously is going to have her flavors, but I'm looking to do kind of almost like a light sparkling margarita. So we'd see some lime there. We'll hopefully see, maybe a Paloma. We're toying with passion fruit and guava at the moment. They're pretty popular too. So it's one of those things where we have a long list and we need to get back the samples and we need to see, what travels well, what is going to survive with the shelf life and still taste really great on 1 year later versus that, what's just great to try right now in the kitchen. But that's the goal is to do. It's going to be like I said, a slightly lighter product than what we have at the moment. Still very flavor forward, but focusing on a few less calories, one individual flavor, and a little bit less juice. And the goal of this is obviously to drive margin on the product as well. And these are lessons that you learn along the way when you sort of go, do you know what?
Yeah.
I'm going to make a really tasty drink and everyone's going to buy it, but more people are going to buy it if it's less expensive.
No, that's so exciting. I'm really looking forward to trying all the flavors. So I'm currently in Spain right now. Can I get it delivered or no?
Unfortunately not. It's a bit tricky to sort of sell overseas. We'll do the tasting when you get back to New York. We'd be happy to host you. But that's sort of something that when you're embarking onto a business like this, everywhere is different. The alcohol rules vary state to state. So if I was to go back in time, the great upside, right, is barriers to entry. It's a lot harder for somebody to come in and start doing what we're doing than it is to say, let's start like an online, lead generation company, whether it was, something sort of slightly more mainstream. The barriers to entry and the complications within this industry make it, I guess it's a benefit from our point of view, but it does mean we have a lot of red tape to jump through every time we're opening a new state.
So the barriers to entry is mostly the regulation.
Compliance, regulation. Yeah, you've got to do a lot of tracking and a lot of reporting, state by state, reporting on sales, that sort of thing, making sure all of your individual licenses for each state are up to date and that sort of thing as well.
So you've had a very successful career in finance, and now you have dived into this entrepreneurship. How would you compare working in finance versus being an entrepreneur?
I would say I definitely had the benefit of being able to wield the Blackstone sword. So you tend to get a lot of response from a lot of people very quickly, very eager to work with you, and they, performed at a very high level. You then change into a brand new industry, and all of a sudden you don't have that behemoth behind you, and people don't really know who you are, and they move at their own pace. So I think one of the things that my biggest lesson is everything takes a lot longer than you expect and that you would like it to take. And it's just because people are living their lives and your project isn't necessarily as important to them, or you're one of many. So yeah, swallowing that pill was pretty tricky, but then you get used to it. You adjust your management style and all of your forecasting to sort of match what the industry is doing.
What's the most rewarding part of creating and growing Buena Fe?
I'm hoping it's going to be the exit. But
do you have a sense of a timeline when you would like to exit?
So our goal, I think, would be to exit in 5 years, because the wonderful thing about the US is, and the IRS is QSBS, qualified small business stock. For those who don't know what that is, it's a really great incentive for people to invest in small companies, startups, etc. And what that means is if you buy and hold stock in a small company and you hold that stock for over 5 years, when you go to sell it, you have $10 million capital gains waiver. So
oh, wow.
all of a sudden, yeah, you're 20%.
So you pay no tax.
You pay no capital gains. Exactly.
Wow.
So that's sort of our driver for timeline.
And what qualifies you as like a small business?
I think it's to do with either the valuation or the size of the investment initially. I have to go back and check on that.
What do you envision Buenafe looks like in 5 years?
When I did our end of year report to our initial investors this year, I said my goal, I want us to be a 300,000 case brand in 5 years. So that's probably going to be across various SKUs. So obviously our existing flavors that we're doing, but then there'll be another couple of 8-packs. But the goal there really is volume. And the reason behind that is, you've got someone like Gallo who turned around, a couple of weeks ago and bought Fisher Island lemonade. And Gallo traditionally make their own products. So, they made High Noon and they've been sticking to that, but they're seeing a shift in the market, and they're seeing brands that have the potential to do serious volume. And I think they picked up Fisher Island when they were doing 200,000 cases a year, but it took them about 9 years to get there. So it takes time, and they obviously started when the market was a lot smaller. But our goal is obviously to chart the course for 300,000 cases in 5 years, and then try and get an exit to either a bigger player or private equity company, something like that.
And what does 300,000 mean, say, in terms of revenue and EBITDA?
That's a good question. Putting me on the spot, but I would say that's probably going to be in the region of $9 to $10 million in top line revenue, and then the goal EBITDA. The goal of that is, if we're up doing that kind of scale, you're really reducing your cost of goods through that volume. So you want to be hitting that kind of 35 to 40% gross revenue margin. So I don't know what of all the operational costs are going to look like at that point in the future. But I think, like I said, thinking about it on case terms is our goal, because we want to build an efficient and profitable operating company. We think, we're going to be, nicely profitable in 3 years' time. When one of the big guys is looking at us, they're going, okay, well, these guys are already doing volume. And then they know that they can take that brand and they're already going to introduce a number of efficiencies. So they're going to make it even better. So their bottom line, EBITDA for that particular product is going to be vastly improved on where we can get to.
So say you reach your goal of 300,000 cans. At this point, you're already cash positive business. Why even exit? Why don't just hold it for a while? Like, do you have other ventures or things you want to do? Or so this is kind of a short-term play? Like, why not hold this, till you're actually just, you're managing it and you're getting a bunch of cash flow?
Yeah, I mean, I may feel very differently about it then, but if you ask me if I have any other ideas, my fiance, she says to me, she's like, "Oh, I come into the bedroom," and I was like, "I've had an idea." She's like, "Not another one." God. So I'm always having lots of ideas. We're looking at that 5-year timeline with an exit, because I think, investors are kind of would like to see that sort of windfall. We have some colleagues from Blackstone who are invested in this. They're used to that type of return pattern with a big exit. And that's sort of what we talked about initially. If, on the other hand, we go in a different direction and we sort of say, right, well, let's keep pushing the tequila business. Maybe we do some rum and some whiskey. It may go down the other route. I guess we'll play it by ear. But as it stands at the moment, we'd love to get that exit. We shall see.
What's one piece of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, say even finance people, who are looking to take that leap of faith and do something that they're really passionate about?
I would say definitely give it a go. You only get one shot at this game that we're all aware of, right? And if you can do it at a time in your life when the risks of failure are going to have minimal impact to you, then you give it a go. And remember, it will take longer than you think it will, and it will be harder some days than you think it will, but the other days you'll have some great days and it'll be totally worth it. And if you fail, fall on your face, then you gave it a try, and that's something that the majority of people in your circle are probably not doing. So well done you for giving it a go.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so true. You get one shot at life. It's better to try something and do something than, be 50 years old and even be making a lot of money, but have that regret that, oh, I did not start this one thing that I really wanted to.
No, completely agree. I mean, it's a long way divorced from the first business I started, which was, I'm going to show my age here, but when I was at university, they introduced the WAP internet, and everybody was, all the rage with the polyphonic ringtones. And so me and a friend, we actually worked out how to set up a WAP website that people could go to and download polyphonic ringtones for free, that we were actually taking off a website that was sampling them. So maybe it wasn't strictly legal, but we then were able to sort of charge a bit of advertising money to people to be on that page. But yeah, we technology changed and they shut down the link to the site, and that was sort of the first. Yeah. That was the first taste of it. And I guess it's once you have a taste of something like that, it's difficult to get it out of the back of your mind.
Andrew, what do you want your legacy to be in your business life and then your personal life?
I think one of the things, certainly from business, is you want to be successful, but you want to be successful with a good team of people around you. I think you want to be able to share in that success. The old adage of if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go fast, go together is very true. And I like building teams of people who are as excited as I am. And so I think, my goal would be that if I can make this business a real success and I can take some people with me along for the ride and have a good time, that would be kind of the goal, number one goal in business. And then personally, I think, I just got engaged a couple of weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. So we're going to get married later this year and start a family soon after that, hopefully. And so I just hope that I can be half as good a parent as my parents have been to me. I think that's
that's sweet.
Yeah, that's the kind of goal I would like.
So at the end of this, we do a few rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Okay, born ready. Let's have it.
Favorite alcoholic drink?
Right now, I would say I'm very partial to a Mezcal Negroni.
Ooh, I like that one too. Favorite vacation getaway?
Mexico City. I think that's somewhere we'd stop on the way down to produce. The food scene and the culture down there is incredible. And we're gagging to go for like the Formula One.
When is that?
I think it's normally October.
The best food pairing with tequila?
Tacos, 100%.
Tacos, okay.
Always.
Best area to live in New York City?
Nolita.
Nolita.
Yeah, I'm biased. Like that was my favorite spot to live. I was on Elizabeth Street between Prince and Houston, and there was just you got a lot of digital brands, so we're sort of moving into that street, like new stores coming. It's tree lined. It's beautiful. In the summer, everybody's walking around with a smile on their face. There's a lot of good food and drinks in the neighborhood. Big fan of that. But it is a lot of old walk ups. So that's the
okay. Favorite book?
I'd say if I'm going to steer away from business books and just talk about regular books, it would be The Green Mile by Stephen King. I think that was like one of the early books that I ever read, and I just found that I couldn't put it down. Such an incredible story.
Andrew, my friend, thank you so much for coming on. This has been so much fun, and we've learned a ton about the alcohol industry from you. Thank you so much.
That's been my pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.